Okay, grade 8s, we're on to adding integers. And as I said at the end of the last video, this is the one. This is the one you got to understand. This is the one you got to get. Okay, it's so important. I would say people who struggle with adding integers, they're the sort of people that struggle with math in high school. They can still do really well in math, but it just makes your life so much easier if you feel confident with adding integers. Now, there's all sorts of different ways that you can think about adding integers. I'm going to go through a bunch of them, but you don't need to know all of these. In fact, you don't need to know any of these. I don't care which method you use, as long as you have a method that works for you, and then you can consistently add integers. So if you like, the first method, the number line method I'm going to talk about, and it just rings true for you, then don't worry about any of the others. Or if you like the money method, which I'm going to talk about, then just stick with that one. Or if you have your own method, you don't like any of my methods, then stick with that, as long as you got something that works. So the first method we have is the number line method. Great method. You can always use a number line in my class. I'll give one to you anytime you need it. And so basically what you're doing with your number line method is you're starting on the number line at the first number. So the first number I see in this question is positive 4. So I go up to positive 4, and this is where I'm starting, right there. And now I'm adding positive 3. So because I'm adding a positive number, I'm moving more in the positive direction. So I move 3 in the positive direction. 1, 2, 3. Oh, the answer must be positive 7, or if you want, just 7. Okay, I'm going to use the same number line for all these questions. The next one, negative 5. So that's where I start. I start at negative 5, and I'm adding positive 7. Again, because it's a positive number, I move to the right, to the positive direction. So I go up 7 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's my answer. It's positive 2, or just 2 if you want. And one more of these ones. Negative 2 is my starting point this time. So here I am at negative 2. And I'm adding negative 4. Oh, if I'm adding a negative, I'm going in that negative direction. So I actually have to go 4 steps in this direction. 2, 3, 4. And I end up at negative 6. So this is one method for adding integers. I like it. And go with that if you want. Okay, next one. We have the exact same questions for this one. This is the money method. So this is where you're thinking of if you have a positive amount, it's like money that you have. And if you have a negative amount, it's money that you owe someone. So in the first question, you have $4 and then you have 3 more dollars, right? You come across 3 more dollars. So you got 4 and you got 3 more. Well, that's pretty easy. You have $7, don't you? The second question, you owe $5 to someone, but then you get $7. So is this good or bad? Are you owing money now, or do you have money? You have money. You owed 5, but you got 7. So now you can pay this person off, and how much do you still have left over? You still have $2 left over. So the answer is positive 2. How about this one? You owe $2, and then you owe another $4. Uh-oh, now you owe even more money, don't you? So actually you're in debt now, $6. So it's minus 6, or negative 6, sorry. Alright, so that's another way you can think of it. Next one, the water method. So what I mean by this one is kind of like you're putting the number line. It's almost like you're putting it up and down rather than left and right, right? If we look at the number line here, it goes from the left to the right. Well, it's almost like you turn it on its side so that your really small numbers, your negatives are down here, underwater, right? Below water. Up here is your positive numbers, above water, and right at water level is 0. So basically what you're doing is looking at how far above or below the water level these things are. So if you have plus 6, that means you're 6 above the water. You're up here 6, I don't know if you're floating up there or what you're doing, but you're 6 above the water, and then you're adding another 2. You're going another 2 above. Another 2 here. Where are you at now? You're now 8 above. So positive 8 would be your answer. Okay, next one. You start at negative 6, so you're negative 6, or you're 6 below, but I'll put negative 6 here. You're 6 below the water level, and you're climbing up 3, so you come back up 3. So where are you now? You're at negative 6, you come back up 3. You're not as deep anymore. You're only 3 below the water. You're at negative 3. And the last one here, you're at negative 3, so you're down here at negative 3, and then you go even deeper. You go another 3 here. Negative 3. So where you're now, you're at negative 3, you go another negative 3, so you're now down at negative 6. So there's the water method. Alright, here's another one I really like. I think this is a good one, the integer tiles method. So the way this one works is you can represent numbers with little tiles, like little plastic pieces we would probably use in class. Or you can just draw them on here. If it's positive 5, that means I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's positive 5. And I also have positive 2. 1, 2. So if I add those together, if I put the positive 5 and the positive 2 together, what do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 positives. So my answer is positive 7, or just 7. Okay? This one, negative 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 6 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, here's the key to this whole method. What happens if you have a negative and a positive? A negative and a positive cancel out. They make 0. Right? If you have negative 1 and plus 1, it cancels out, you get 0. So your next task here is going to be, once you've written this all down, when you add them together, so you put this all together, you can do some canceling. This negative can cancel with one positive, this negative can cancel a positive, this can cancel a positive, and this can cancel a positive. So what's left? 2 positives. The answer is positive 2. Alright, what if they're both negative? Well, you'd have 3 negatives, and you'd also have 5 negatives. So you don't need to cancel here. When you add, when you put them together, there's no canceling. You would just add them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 negatives. Alright, I like this method. In fact, I like it so much that kind of a variation, because the problem with this is you have to write all these pluses and minuses. But if once you get the concept, you can move to this method, the 2-question method. I was tempted to call it the Waj method, because this is my favorite one. This is the one that I use in my head when I'm trying to figure out adding integer questions. So basically the 2 questions you ask are as follows. Number 1, are there more negatives or positives? So for example, in the questions we just did down here, when I put these together, is there more negatives or positives? Well, there's obviously more positives, and for that reason the answer is going to be positive. In this question, was there more negatives or positives? Remember, we had 4 negatives and 6 positives. There was more positives, so the answer is going to be positive. In this question, was there more negatives or positives? They're all negative, so obviously there's more negatives, so the answer is going to be negative. So by asking that question, what do you have more of, negatives or positives? It will give you the sign of the answer. Then the second question is, how many more are there? So if we go back here again, let's start with the middle one this time. We had 4 negatives and 6 positives. How many more positives are there than negatives? There's 2 more. We knew that once we did the canceling. How about this one? We had 5 positives and 2 more positives. How many positives are there than negatives here? Well, there's 7 more, because there's no canceling at all. And similarly over here, we have 3 negatives and 5 negatives. They get combined to get 8 negatives. How many more than that is that than the positives? It's 8 more, because there's no positives to do any canceling. So let me show you how I would do these questions. First question, are there more negatives or positives? So I have 4 positives and I have 3 more positives. It's all positives, so obviously I have more positives. So already I know in this question here, my answer is going to be positive. Now, how many more do we have? How many more positives than negatives? Well, we have 4. If you want, you can go back to this. We have 4 of these and 3 of these. So how many more positives do we have than negatives? We have 7 more. So my answer is positive 7. Okay, next one. I have 5 negatives. I have 7 positives. What do you have more of, negatives or positives? You have more positives. 7 is more than 5, so you have more positives, so its answer is going to be positive. How much more is 7 than 5? It's 2 more, so that's your answer, positive 2. And this one, do you have more negatives or positives? Well, you only have negatives. You have 2 of them, you have 4 more of them. So obviously your answer is negative because there is no positives. How many more negatives than positives are there? Well, we got 2, and we have 4 more. There's no canceling in this one, so you have 6 more negatives than positives. And there's your answer. Alright, number 6 is the sign operation method, I'll call this. Now, if you can wrap your head around this one, you're really in a good state for when we move on to grade 9 and 10. I mean, this is probably the best one for your long-term success. But if you find this one too complicated, don't worry about it. So, you're going to figure out the sign and you're going to figure out the operation. When I say operation, I mean whether it's add or subtract. Now, I know that's a bizarre question because I'm adding here and I'm adding here and I'm adding here. You might be like, what are you talking about, Mr. Waj? You're always adding. Well, kind of. Let's see what I mean. So, first of all, to figure out the sign, the answer is going to have the sign of the larger value. And we already kind of did that. That's more or less the same question as, are there more negatives or positives? So, for example, in this first question here, what's larger, 5 or 2? I'm not talking about positive 5 and negative 2. I'm just talking about the value. It's called the absolute value in math. We'll talk about it in probably grade 11 or 12 or something. But if you ignore the sign in front, that's called the absolute value. So what's bigger, 5 or 2? Well, 5 is bigger. So then the sign is going to be positive. You just take the sign of the larger one. So the sign is going to be positive. Okay, let's just do this one. Just figure out the sign. What's larger, 6 or 3? 6 is larger than 3. So the sign's going to be negative. And let's do one more. What's larger, 2 or 4? 4 is larger. And the sign on 4 is negative. So we know the answer is going to be negative. Okay, so that's not so bad. Here's the part that confuses people. If the signs are the same, you're going to add the values. Alright, so for example, in this last one, they both had negatives. Negative, negative. So you add the 2 and the 4 together, and you get 6. There's our answer, negative 6. But what about these ones where the signs are different? You actually don't go 5 plus 2 and get 7. This is going to drive you crazy, but what you actually do is you subtract the values. So let me go back to one we've already done, and I will show you this. If you look at this one, so let's try using the method we're just talking about. The bigger value is 4. 4 is bigger than 3, and the sign on 4 is positive. So you know it's going to be positive. Now, because the signs are the same, positive and positive, you add the 4 and the 3, and you get 7. Perfect. Okay, look at this one, though. Which is bigger, 5 or 7? 7 is bigger, and the sign is positive. So there you go. Now, look, if you were to add the 5 and the 7, you get 12, but it doesn't say 12 here, it says 2. In fact, because they kind of canceled each other out, remember, we had like 5 negatives and 7 positives, and what we said would happen is you get this canceling out, and by canceling like this, you're kind of subtracting, you're getting rid of stuff. So you would actually take the 7 and the 5, take the big one first, the 7, and subtract the smaller. 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, confusing, right? This is why I'm saying many of you probably don't want to deal with this year. But if you do get it, it's great. So for this one, bigger one's 5. 5 has a positive. There you go. The signs are different. One's positive, one's negative. So we're going to subtract. We subtract the big, which is 5. Take away 2, the small. 5 minus 2 is 3. And that's what the answer is. This one, bigger number is 6. So you take that sign, the negative. The signs are different. So we're going to subtract. Subtract the big one, which is 6. Take away the small one, which is 3. 6 minus 3 is 3. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more that way, and then I'm going to switch back to a different method. This one, what's bigger, 10 or 5? 10 is bigger, and the sign is positive, so it's definitely going to be positive. Now, the signs are the same. Remember, if the signs are the same, you're going to add the values. So 10 and 5 is 15. It's like you have 10 positives and 5 more. You have even more positives. But look at this one. What's bigger, 8 or 7? 8 is bigger, so the answer is going to be negative. Now, you're not adding 8 negatives and 7 more negatives. You have 8 negatives and they're being counteracted or fought against, or whatever you want to think of it, by 7 positives. So this is where you're going to subtract. The signs are different this time, so you have to subtract. You're going to take the big amount, which is 8, and subtract the small amount, which is 7, and you get 1. Okay, what happens when you have opposites? Negative 2 and positive 2 are opposites. What happens when you add those? Well, let's do this method. Negative 2 and positive 2, and I'm adding them together. And remember, you can now do some canceling. This can cancel with this, and this cancels this, and you're left with nothing. There's nothing there. So what's the answer? The answer is 0. When you add opposites, you always get 0. Okay, I'm going to use my 2 question, the Waj method. Are there more negatives or positives, and how many more? This is my preferred one, so I'm going to go with this. Alright, are there more negatives or positives in this question? You have 4 negatives and 10 more negatives. They're all negatives. So since you have more negatives, the answer is going to be negative. How many more negatives do you have than positives here? Well, you have 4 negatives, and you have 10 more. I don't want to draw them all, but you have 10 more here. So 4 and 10 makes 14. Remember, same sign, so you add them together. Alright, this one's not too bad. Negative 5 plus 0. So there's negative 5, and we add nothing to it. So what do we still have? Negative 5. That was a bit silly. And the last one. Negative 2 and negative 4. If you add them together, you now have negative 6. Alright, that was a lot of different methods. If you're struggling, pick the one that appeals to you the most, and let me know which one it is, and I'll go through it with you slowly and make sure you understand this. Alright, good luck, and please let me help you. See you later. Bye.